Coming up on this week's show, a new Simpsons retro point-and-click adventure.
How to play Sega Saturn games on your PlayStation 4.
And we chat to the voice behind Soul Calibur, Mortal Kombat, and over 300 video games, Lani Minella.
The Retro Hour podcast is brought to you each and every week with our good friends at Bitmap Books. Now, something you need to check out that's coming up from them this month is Go Straight, the ultimate guide to side-scrolling beat-em-ups, celebrating classics like Streets of Rage, Golden Axe, Final Fight, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and over 450 pages. This takes a deep dive into beat-em-up legends. Pre-orders are available from February 14th, and check out the full details at bitmapbooks.co.uk. Hello and welcome to the Retro Hour podcast, episode number 313, your weekly dose of retro gaming and technology news with me, Dan Wood.
Me, Ravi Abbott.
And me, Joe Fox.
And welcome to this week's show, taking you behind the scenes on classic video games and, of course, a healthy dose of nostalgia laid on as well. You know, I'm really hoping that Ravi is on his A game this week, because you and I are probably not, are we, Joe?
Yeah, I'm not feeling, I'd say I'm not feeling 100%. I'm feeling about 5%, to be perfectly honest. It's been 2 years coming, but COVID has finally got me. But not only has it finally got me, it's got me like 2 days after you got it as well, didn't it, Dan?
Which, Ben, we haven't seen each other.
We haven't seen each other.
Like,
it's just
nothing I've transmitted to you.
A pure coincidence that we've both got it at the same time. But I'm here, I'm powering through, I'm on the energy drinks, you know, and Ravi has pulled it out the bag this week and just done, like, he's done the whole interview on his own. He's done pretty much all the research the episode on his own, just so I could stay all tucked up in bed. So I really appreciate that.
Well, it's pretty awesome because, I don't know, we're doing interviews separately at the moment. I guess it's with time and stuff. We're not splitting up as the Retro Hour team and
and Joe and I were shivering in bed, I think. When
I had a fever.
Because you guys did an amazing interview last week. That was really good fun, and I really enjoyed that.
Ian Grieve, what a legend.
Oh, absolute legend. And today we've got another legend on, and this is something a bit different. We've never had a video game voice actor on before, so this is a really entertaining interview. It's with Lani Minella, and she's an absolutely amazing vocalist. Like, I can't believe how much stuff she's done. She started, like, this interview, we talk all about it, and she started with Laserdisc and kind of, you know, the really early days of doing voice on video games. Went into CD-ROM, was a voice director behind Duke Nukem 3D. So, you know, she was playing all the female roles in Duke Nukem 3D. She found Johnson John as well, who played Duke himself. You know, she went into Diablo, just loads of titles. We talk about Bubsy 3D, your absolute favourite game there, Dan.
She was actually the voice of Bubsy.
She does Bubsy on the interview.
Wow.
Yeah. Unreal Tournament. The list could go on. The Last of Us. You know, just looking at her credits is absolutely insane. And this chat's really interesting because we talk about the kind of development and progression. Because, you know, back then a lot of studios just used their staff as voice actors for games, and especially when CD-ROMs were coming out and stuff, you know, they really didn't think of it as a main kind of thing, especially not being realistic as well. Like, realism is in games now, and it's what it's all about. But back then, it was like a bit of a kind of novelty to even have a voice on a game.
And you know what? Actually, it's kind of a part of gaming where there are so many like voice clips and stuff in games. And when you talk about, you know, Mortal Kombat and Soul Calibur, you know, beat 'em up games like that, where we all recognize those voice samples in there, and they're a big part of the game, but they're probably a lot more subconscious than something like the graphics, for example, but still a very big part of it.
Yeah, but even like the sounds of, she does a whole piece where she's talking about getting hit by a grenade or getting hit by a bullet, and how the kind of expression needs to be really extreme and really out there. And when she actually did a lot of these sounds, I was instantly transported back to, you know, like playing FPS games on my PC back in the days. And, you know, it's just amazing to kind of hear. And it's a great area for us to explore, actually, voice acting in video games, especially for an audio podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure you're going to be familiar with many of the games that Ravi chats about with our special guest, Lani Minella, coming up on the show in around 25 minutes from now. Now, we're poised over our mute buttons for fits of coughing, I'm sure, Joe, but we can get into the news stories this week, because there's loads of good news stories that we need to chat about. And The Simpsons, admittedly, The Simpsons on TV, kind of past its prime now. I still watch it if it comes on, but there are some incredible Simpsons video games. And this one, I was quite pleased to see, is not only a retro-style point-and-click adventure game that takes one of the best scenes of classic Simpsons. Someone has made the famous steamed hams scene into a retro point-and-click game.
I love this. I absolutely love this. I'm gonna hand it over to Ravi in a second to tell us more about the game, but I adore season 1 to 10 of The Simpsons, and it really peaks kind of like season 3 to season 7. And the steamed hams episode is from season 7, the episode where it's just the short films about Springfield. There's I think it's called 22 short films about Springfield or something like that. And the whole with Principal Skinner, and he's meant to be making lunch for Superintendent Chalmers, and he goes and buys the Krusty Burgers. To me, it's just legendary, isn't it?
It's the ultimate farce. You see that episode, and to me, that's like Laurel and Hardy or something. Skinners and Chalmers. It's so classic American, and every line is it gets more and more ridiculous. Like his whole house is on fire, and he's just like, "Okay, see you," and it's
and he's just like, "What's going in there?" And he's like, "It's the Northern Lights," and he's like, "What?" It's like, "It's the Aurora Borealis," or whatever it is, and he's like, "In your kitchen," and he's like, "Yeah." In March, he's like, "Yeah."
and this has basically become a meme because everybody just loves it so much. I remember seeing the vaporwave remixes of steamed hams that people did and stuff, but this seems to be a kind of graphical adventure in the style of Leisure Suit Larry or one of these old games.
Monkey Island, isn't it?
Yeah, it's even got the fonts and the text look exactly like Monkey Island.
And the Scum Engine UI and everything, it's all very similar to, those classic LucasArts adventures.
It looks to me like you have to pick what actually happens in the episode for it to kind of play out, to do what it's, what it's meant to do. But it just looks like it's been crafted really, really well. So this has been made by Neo Dement on Game Jolt. Is that correct?
Yeah, so what it is, it's only a very short game. It's around 6 minutes. It is just that scene.
Yeah.
So it's not like a full experience or anything. It's really just, a short mini game you can play for a bit of fun. And he's put it up there. Obviously the big thing everyone's going to be asking is, obviously Disney own copyright to The Simpsons now.
Oh, yeah.
Are they going to be all right with this? And they're actually saying, there is disclaimers in there saying all trademarks belong to them and everything. And, they're encouraging you to buy official products.
They can't stop the power of steamed hams. It's such a big thing on the internet. They're not going to be able to take it down. They'll have to have a department dedicated to taking down steamed hams content.
That's brilliant. I just love it how you have to click on the steamed hams in your inventory and put it on the table and stuff like that and serve it to him. It's so silly, but I love it. And the graphical style of it really does look like you'd be playing it on like you say, an old PC or the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, it does look more like, I know you're saying it's Super Nintendo, it looks more, and maybe that's because I've got the association of Simpsons games with being on those platforms.
Yeah.
It does seem a bit more like that than, say, Monkey Islands. Where it's a bit more, detailed. But then that's the Simpsons look, isn't it? Kind of cartoony and,
Yeah, they've captured it really, really well. I love it.
Yeah, so if you're a fan of those classic point-and-click adventure games and you want a bit of a giggle for a few minutes, like I said, it's only a short game and it's free to download. You can play it on Windows and it's on the Game Jolt website, so I'll link that up if you want to give it a free download at theretrohour.com. Now, something else that I know we've been talking about on the show for quite a while, all these rumours that keep going out, and to be honest, it's looking more and more likely that we are going to get a reboot of GoldenEye 007 for the Xbox. Now, we did have that little leak about the Xbox achievements that we talked about a couple of months ago, didn't we? When there was actually an achievements list for GoldenEye on the Xbox One that was leaked out there. But now it looks like there could be a few more clues as to this coming game.
Yeah, so there's been a tweet doing the rounds, which was tweeted on February 4th, by somebody called Andy Robinson, who tweeted, "I wouldn't be surprised if a certain super spy returns in the next few weeks." Now, obviously, that could mean anybody. It could be Secret Squirrel. I can't think of any spy versus spy, but no, it's definitely it's got to be James Bond, because Andy Robinson used to work for Playtonic Games, which, you know, notably is comprised of many of the developers who worked for Rare and worked on GoldenEye.
Yeah.
So, you know, people
they did Ukulele, didn't they?
Yeah, I believe.
So, yeah, that's kind of like a follow-on to Banjo and Kazooie as well. So that's like a kind of connection with Rare there.
Yeah, so it's like we're putting the puzzle together here ourselves, but, you know, it's not like 2 + 2 = 5. It is 2 + 2 = 4, you know, with the evidence there. So I feel like from that tweet, we're probably going to see, you know, some sort of trailer or something, you know, coming in the next couple of days. I mean, we're recording this on the 8th. So, you know, that's 4 days ago. That tweet's been out there now. It's not been removed or anything like that. So hopefully it comes, because, you know, as Ravi said before, we end up talking a lot about rumours on the show, and you just want it to become true sometimes. It's just come out.
It's speculative, but it's also, it's like, it's the ultimate, isn't it? Getting GoldenEye on a new system and having new features like achievements and online multiplayer. You know, for me, it's like GoldenEye and a Dreamcast 2, and I'd just be like in heaven. The two ultimate things that I want.
That would be amazing. When I said that as well, I was thinking of all the Sega rumours we always talk about. So yeah, that would be, or GoldenEye on the Dreamcast 2 would be
exclusive.
Would be pretty amazing. But yeah, hopefully we'll get there eventually. But hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we will actually see something, you know. And there's a lot of Bond mania at the moment, you know, the success of the last film.
It makes sense to me. It's like, you know, it's a guaranteed score, that is. If they do it right, you know, that's going to be huge. And I think 100%. It'll probably be huger than many of the retro titles that have come out and many other ports that have come out. It's like, you know, the ultimate one that we all wanted for a real long time. I remember that the co-op fun behind GoldenEye was just absolutely amazing, and I'd even go to my neighbour's house and we'd just sit there and it'd just be me and him, and we'd just lay proximity mines everywhere. And it would be like the hardest, just to get across the map to find him would be a challenge.
Lay proximity mines everywhere and then run at each other with just slapping each other.
Yeah, and have them like under the stairs and stuff like that.
Oh man, what a game. I mean, if it comes out, we're just going to have to stream it or something, like the three of us playing it, because it is just such a good game. And, you know, we've been talking about rumours about it now for the best part of 2 years. So I just, fingers crossed, we're coming to there's light at the end of the tunnel.
We know this tweet as well. Have you guys noticed the Apple Watch?
No.
If you look closely, because these tweets actually look like they were the pictures that Andy's posted on a night out with his friend. And if you scroll down about the third one in,
do you think he's just drunk, going like,
if you look very closely, his friend's wearing an Apple Watch that actually has got the same face on there that Bond had in 007 in the game, in GoldenEye.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So there's another clue, and someone zoomed in on it, and it looks like it's the same watch face.
Oh, I can't see that. It's telling me I have to sign up to Twitter to have a look. So
it's worth it, Joe. But yeah, so it's looking more and more likely like it's going to happen. And again, I mean, we know we've talked about it before. It's the fact that, obviously, I think the big reason that it hasn't happened before is the licensing. That's obviously kind of the tricky bit about this game, I imagine. But it just seems like it would be a way to print money, providing it's a good game.
And providing the engine's done correctly as well. Yeah. Because that engine went on to the Time Splitters franchise and stuff. And like, you know, that engine was so good to play on that I hope they kind of keep the same feel and vibe. Like, I'd hate to see like a GTA Vice City style Unity kind of remake, you know.
I'm hoping that companies have learned from that, because it's messing with people's memories, especially games of this legendary status, you know, when the games that kind of people grew up with and they've got such strong nostalgia for it, you've got to do a good job.
If it's games like people this. Like Playtonic, and well, he's ex-Playtonic, but you know, those kind of people know what they're doing with releasing these titles.
Yeah, I have every faith in them, so we'll keep an eye on that story apparently in the next coming weeks. So as soon as we hear more, you will be the first to know. Now, when we're playing retro games, particularly when I get like on my Amiga or my Commodore 64, I know it's a little bit divisive. Because I look at, Facebook groups and stuff, and a lot of people, they're playing their Amigas and the C64s with Mega Drive pads and that kind of thing, which I don't think you should actually play a Commodore 64 with a Mega Drive pad. Apparently that can be very bad for it. But a lot of people prefer to use joypads, as we call them, instead of joysticks. I've got to say, if I'm playing certain games, for example, I couldn't imagine playing something like Lotus Turbo Challenge 2 using a control pad. For me, that's got to be a joystick game. So there are definitely certain games, and beat-em-ups as well, where I feel a lot more at home with a stick.
Platformers, it's weird. Like, I know a lot of console people are used to gamepads and stuff, and I always played my platformers with a joystick, and it's always that kind of, Amiga up to jump that I needed the kind of joystick to do,
Yeah, and I find that, the fact that you and I kind of grew up with a computer background and joysticks were the de facto standard on computers, really. And Joe, you're a console kid. I mean, do you find that the other way around? Do you find it awkward to play with joysticks on classic games?
I was going to try and stay quiet, but now you've asked me. Like you say, I'm a console guy, and I think 100% there's a time and a place for joysticks. Especially like in arcades where you're playing like Afterburner or Star Wars pod racing. I definitely feel like. And I'm thinking of the Star Wars game now with the lightsaber battle at the end.
You like a big joystick?
Yeah, I like the big joysticks like that. And obviously like proper arcade joysticks as well for fighters and stuff. But when it comes to, if I was to be playing like an old Mega Drive or SNES or something like that, playing a platformer or even a racing game, I wouldn't be able to do it. Like, I just would not be able to do it. I mean, I think we've played Micro Machines before on the Amiga with them, and I can't get on with them. I'm a controller guy. I'm a D-pad kind of guy.
Well, not to get too innuendo-y, but back then, a joystick was your kind of sense of pride. You'd go around someone's house and you'd whip out your best joystick. And,
how does your mind work, Ravi?
No, but you know what I mean. You'd have an advantage if you had a good joystick, and you'd be like, "Oh no, I'm going to play you with this one." And now I've gone down this road. I can't dig myself out this hole. You take over, Dan.
No, but I know what you're saying though. Because when I was a kid, we always had my mum. I don't know if your mum was the same. She'd always buy me like the crappiest, cheapest joysticks. If I broke one, she'd go to like the market and buy me. I think I generally always got Cheetah 125s.
I had a Cheetah as well. Like I had hand-me-down ones. So I had a Cheetah Star Probe, which was quite a huge one, but I think that was a hand-me-down that I got, and I had even the old Atari one, the plastic classic one with the one button.
I'm looking at the Star Probe now. Yeah, I do remember that. That had an interesting look to it. That's a big joystick. Yeah, I can see why you were proud.
Yeah, it's very very clicky as well. Yeah.
Well, I had the Zip Stick is probably my all-time favourite joystick, for like Amiga games and C64. That's generally the stick I use on there. I know a lot of people love the Competition Pros as well, which there have been some like the arcade joysticks that came out
the one
recently.
With the ball on the top, was that the Competition Pro?
Yeah, it's a bit more. Yeah, arcade-style joysticks. And there have been, quite a few efforts recently. I mean, obviously, Monster Joysticks, who sponsored this show recently, have got some incredible arcade-style joysticks. And we've got the arcade ones that kind of, they take the Competition Pro style, but put the arcade parts in there as well, so it feels a lot more premium. But the reason we're talking about joysticks is, and a couple of people have sent us this on Twitter and Facebook over the last couple of weeks, this is a thing called the Unithor. Now, this is a new joystick that's coming soon for retro computers, and this thing looks pretty impressive, and actually it takes a lot of the things that probably we all found a little bit annoying about desktop joysticks back in the day, and improves upon them quite a lot. For example, did you ever use the sticky cups on the bottom of a joystick?
Yeah, all the time, and I'd constantly be licking them, and then after a while, they'd taste really weird. you'd still kind of have to lick them and stick them on there, because you would really push them left and right, and you don't want to snap your joystick.
And you know, whenever I buy a second-hand joystick and it's got those on the bottom, I just take a pair of pliers and I pull them off because I know that they've probably got like 30 years worth of dried up spit on there. It's not something you want to get your hands on.
Oh, man.
But this new joystick here, though, it does away with the suction cups of old. And actually, it's got these kind of studs on the bottom that actually make it a lot more solid, a lot more durable as well, and actually keep it positioned onto the desk.
Oh, cool.
So there are a lot of things like that as well. And they've got stuff like some really good ergonomics on there as well. Because you play with a lot of these older joysticks and actually they give you a bit of hand cramp after a while.
Yeah, it looks like a PC flight stick of like the later kind of PC, but in the stylings of like older, more classic joystick.
Yeah, the position of the fire buttons, and it's got, you know, like a big yoke on there, or shaft, whatever you call it on the joystick. But yeah, I mean, this is really designed for classic arcade games, though. It's not like it's not an analog stick for flight sims or anything like that. Instead, it's designed, you know, to play your Double Dragons with and your Golden Axes and that kind of thing. And there are different colours on it. They've got LEDs are coming soon as well. There's a plutonium orange version, a radioactive uranium version of it as well. And it's actually got two uniquely operating fire buttons, which was always the thing that annoyed me back in the day when you had, you know, for example, the Zip Stick has got two buttons on there, but they actually both do the same thing.
And you had auto fire on some, didn't you, as well? So you could have a little switch and just, you know, constantly hammer the fire button and just use that, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this has got auto fire on it, actually, looking at it. Yeah, but they were handy when you were playing, particularly shoot-'em-up games.
Yeah.
I always found having that on would be quite useful. So yeah, that could, I mean, if they haven't got that on there already, I don't think this is actually, looks like they're going to be doing something, maybe like a Kickstarter or something at some point. So, you know, that could be definitely something that maybe people will ask for.
It seems to have multiple options on it. So it's like A, B, C, and D at the bottom. Maybe you can select different configurations and then, you know, pre-tell it to auto fire or something like that. Yeah,
it looks like there's definitely some element of programmability on this, which is handy because, I mean, there were some games, like I remember if you plugged in a Mega Drive pad into the Amiga and you played Desert Strike, the C button on the Mega Drive would actually change the weapons, whereas before you'd have to hit the spacebar on the Amiga keyboard to do that.
Oh, okay.
So there are, you know, quite a few games that were made for two-button joysticks if you had one, so it's definitely something that I think could be taken more advantage of.
This also has the different inputs, right? So it's got the D sub, but you can also get a USB version.
Yeah, it looks like there's going to be a version of that later on, you know, for emulators and stuff. But I think the original one's going to be Amiga, C64, Atari, Spectrum as well. You know, that kind of classic DB9 connector on there made for retro machines. So, yeah, it looks like they're going to be doing this on Kickstarter by the looks of it. They haven't announced any more details yet, but it does look very cool. And I've liked that, you know, the fact that in recent years there's kind of a bit of attention coming back onto joysticks again, because I think there are certain games where they just feel right. So
yeah, and I guess it's certain generations and certain users like we kind of discussed earlier, and I think it's quite a nice thing actually to get a luxury one. I'd love to get one and hook it up to my modern gaming system and kind of see how that works.
Yes, it's called the UniJoy is the website if you want to check it out, and the joystick's called the UniThor, and we'll keep an eye on that and let you know when the Kickstarter launches. Now, we've got lots more news stories to get through, and of course, our interview coming up, going behind the world of video game voice acting with Lani Minella. She's coming up on the show in just a minute. Can we take a quick second, though, just to give a huge thank you to the people who make it possible for us to bring out this little show for you every single Friday and chat to legends of the industry. I mean, we've done this now for, over 6 years. We've been doing this podcast every week. And I don't know about you guys, it's always a highlight of the week when we sit down and record an episode of this. Still love it as much as the day
I love
started.
it. You know, it doesn't feel like a chore or a task, because, you know, we've got all these people behind us supporting us, and that makes it absolutely fantastic. And just meeting up with you guys, you know, I'd do this anyway in a pub. The fact is, it's being recorded and it's being professionally done with like interviews and stuff. And, you know, we're independent as well. Like, I look at the podcast charts and there's a lot of people in there, like, you know, IGN and stuff like that, and BBC. There's a lot of big players in there that have a lot of backing, and it's just like literally you, me and Joe. And, you know, we're able to do this because of Patreon and the support from our fans, which is just absolutely amazing. But, you know, for your support, you do get some good stuff back, don't you?
Yeah, so we do an extra podcast every month just for our patrons called the Retro Hour After Hours. Now, the most recent episode, we actually do a deep dive into the year 1993. Next week, I'm going to be dropping a bonus episode, because I've had loads of people ask me about this, of Ian Grieve. Now, I guess last week, who so many people want to hear more from him. And he actually did another hour interview with me and you, didn't he, Joe, that we're just going to put out to our patrons?
He did. He was an absolute legend, and he understood the task, and he was like, "Oh, Patreon." He was like, "Yeah, let's make some money. Let's do it." He was like, it was so like real and down to earth, And I mean, jokes aside, it was an absolutely amazing thing that he was like, "Let's do another hour, and let's." Do a little bit more of a deep dive, a little bit more of the stories that can't be on the main show, if you know what I mean.
Say too hot for TV, basically.
Too hot for TV, absolutely, which we're going to be putting out next week, which I think is going to be an absolutely fantastic episode.
Wait till you hear the story about him introducing Gary Oldman to Billy Connolly on a plane.
Yeah, exactly.
That is worth downloading.
Yeah, some foul language in there as well, which it just had me falling out of my seat. But Ravi's spot on. Like, every week it feels like talking to my mates down at the pub kind of thing when we do this podcast, and it is amazing that we do get to do this thanks to our fans, and that we can keep doing this. Especially like I say, me and Dan have got COVID at the moment. If it wasn't for Patreon, there would have been no show this week. Do you know what I mean? But because we can do it from home because of Patreon.
In our gym jams.
In my hot cup of cocoa, we're still here doing it. So yeah, eternally grateful for it.
Yeah, so if you'd like to join us on Patreon, of course, not only do you get the bonus podcast each month as well, if you're a gold member or above, you get the usual podcast early most weeks, you get it ad-free. There's around, about 50 minutes of extra content in most episodes recently for our patrons. And also you get invited to the monthly Patrons Hangouts that we are going to be doing another one of in the next couple of weeks as well, where we all just get together, a bit like, a virtual users group. You get invited to that every month. And of course, you get the satisfaction of knowing that you're a big part of this show, and it's thanks to you that we can continue to bring it out each and every Friday. So you will get a mention in the most prestigious high score table in the world of retro gaming, the Retro Hour Hall of Fame. And a big thank you to our latest patrons. Thank you so much to Mark Brookes,
Joe Pentony,
Chris McLeod,
and James Bentley, who all backed us on Patreon. And if you'd like to do the same, you'll find it on our website at theretrohour.com. Now, this is a cool little video that you linked up, Joe. This is for people that have got a jailbroken PlayStation 4. This is a video from a guy called Mr. Mario 2011, where actually it's around a 15-minute video where he details how you can play Sega Saturn games on your jailbroken PS4. Now, I've got to admit, I haven't been brave enough to jailbreak my PS4, but watching this, I am quite tempted.
I can't say I've jailbroken or modded any of my consoles or anything like that. I tend to leave that to you guys, and Ravi usually has a good grasp on these things. But how does this work? Because obviously the Sega Saturn is usually like a mess to kind of like emulate and stuff like that.
Well, this is a new emulator that's called Saturn FPKG. Mm-hmm. Now, this is actually from a guy who he made a PlayStation 2 emulator that you can run on the jailbroken PlayStation as well. But what it does is a pretty cool video. It kind of walks you through the process. What you need to do is you actually get your Sega Saturn CD.
Okay.
And you put that into your PC, you rip it as an image on your computer, right. And then there's a program that actually turns it into a file called an FPKG file, which are the files that the PlayStation plays.
Right.
So what it means is, it's kind of like, if you download a game off something like GOG, Good Old Games, and it kind of bakes the emulator into the file.
Yeah.
So what you get is you get a file that you can put on a USB stick, shove that in your jailbroken PlayStation 4, and then it runs like a PlayStation 4 program. So it launches the emulator and the game image that you've baked into this file. So they actually appear on your PlayStation 4 dashboard when you turn it on. So there's a couple of examples that he's got running in here. The main one he plays with is Clockwork Knight, which appears to run really well. And he says, at the moment, it's obviously quite new, and certain games run okay in there. He's got, Daytona running as well, and there's a few kind of texture popping and stuff like that. So certain games do work better than others. At the moment, there's only really, I'd say, a handful of games that are actually working flawlessly on there.
It's hard to emulate the Saturn,
Yeah, that's the thing, yeah.
Yeah, with a lot of systems, there's always a few errors and stuff when you're emulating the Saturn. It's a tough system to do, and I guess it's because of the processors and the kind of way that it was set up. But looking at the way that jailbreaking's done on the PS4 is, I don't know if you can do the PS5 yet. I'm sure someone will be able to at one point, but it seems to be all like kind of relevant to the firmware version that you've got and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's just soft modding and just using a USB stick. So you get that done, and then you'd put this on.
Yeah, so PlayStation 2 emulator they've got on there actually, appears to run quite a lot of stuff. I don't want to say flawlessly, but very, very good compatibility. And this is saying, obviously, like you said, it's a more complicated system. And it's early as well. I mean, this has only been around about a month by the looks of it. So it does mean that there are only a few games that kind of work perfectly. A lot of them have got some small issues. Some of them, have got like major issues that don't work at all. So it's early days, but I think the bit in this video that I love is just watching him kind of scrolling through his dashboard there on his PS4. And he's got stuff in there like Daytona USA, and he's got Clockwork Knight, and just having those Saturn games launchable just by clicking it, and actually you go on there. And the stuff in there that you'd expect from an emulator, there's like a rewind function, and you can do save states and stuff as well, which, I think really adds a lot to the original games.
I need to look into this, because there's a lot of PS4s around, and I reckon it could be quite a good emulation powerhouse and something nice that you could just have, connected to your TV and stuff. Yeah, pretty cool that, people are doing this, and I may have to investigate and see what I can do on it.
Well, that's the thing about Sony. They generally, obviously, I imagine if you're, putting out jailbreaks for the PS5, they're going to jump on your case pretty quickly and get that, video taken down, I'd guess. But with the PlayStation 4, they generally tend to, when a new generation comes out, kind of leave the last generation behind pretty quickly. So even though the PS4 is like supported at the moment and stuff, there are a lot of guides I can see online about how to jailbreak it, and none of them have been like, hit with strikes or anything, whereas the PS5 ones do. So it kind of seems like, the PlayStation 3, that is so easy to mod now.
Yeah.
You go to a website and you can mod it. So it's nothing they've kind of actively patched or anything since the exploits came out there when a new system's been released. So it kind of looks like, maybe they're going to kind of let the PlayStation 4 kind of fall into the hands of the modders and crackers and stuff, and just leave them to get on with stuff like this, which will be cool. I've got to say that my PlayStation 4 is pretty much exclusively a VR machine. Not that I use it much.
My PlayStation 4 is exclusively a Bloodborne machine. That is literally like the only game I play on it.
Does this make me too retro that I've never even played a PS3?
Yeah, that's pretty retro.
Yeah. That is pretty retro.
That's pretty retro.
I played a Switch.
I've got my PS3 set up in here, and actually that was one thing we were chatting about in last Patrons Hangout, wasn't it? How easy that system is to crack now. So I'm a bit like you, Joe. I'm always a bit nervous about modding systems, particularly ones that I still kind of play, because I figure, that is linked to my main PSN account.
Yeah.
And I just think, Sony are going to see it. They're going to, ban it. I'm going to lose all my games.
It's not even about that for me. It's about breaking it. Just not trusting myself to be able to do it. People are always like, oh yeah, this is easy or that's dead easy, even when it comes to like DIY, but I'm a clumsy guy, I would definitely do something wrong at some point. But like you say, on our Patreon Hangout, we've got people coming on all the time like, oh yeah, I just cracked my PlayStation. It was easy. Like, did it in 2 minutes. And I'm just like, blown away by it. I'm just like, what? And then, like you say, Ravi's like, even like, what's a PS3?
Well, actually, if you are a bit of a clumsy gamer, this device actually that we're going to talk about next could be quite useful, because this is a little device. They're calling this Save the Hero, which I think is quite a cool little title. And this is a device from Japan that if you've got kind of maybe neglected cartridges that you haven't really looked inside for a while, and they've got internal batteries in there that have run out of juice and you haven't replaced them, or even worse, maybe they've leaked a bit and you've lost all your precious save data. This is a device that lets you back up all of those save games.
But also the ROM. So if you have like a jailbroken device, you can legally play the ROMs on them. Because you can use this device to back it up. But the thing about this is, the save data as well. Being able to get your old saves off some of these titles are amazing. And, it's pretty cool because it does like a lot of systems in one. What are all the systems here, Joe? Like,
yeah, it's got the NES, the SNES, the N64, the Mega Drive / Genesis, and the entire Game Boy line. So, Game Boy Color, original Game Boy, and Game Boy Advance. So a lot of consoles on there.
Yeah, and like they're saying it's going to be about 70 quid. But, you know, the fact that you could get your whole collection and have it digitized with your saves and all of that. And I could imagine you can then use these ROMs in like other systems, or, you know, emulate them on whatever you want as well, because you kind of own the original cart. But just that save data is just so vital, you know. It's like a time machine. Have you guys ever found like an old memory card, or have you found one of your old saves and then it just takes you back to that time period where you were stuck on that level?
Oh, a million percent. And I, you know, funny you should say that. I bought some PS2 memory cards a few years back, and I went to wipe them, and I found like all the old saves, you know, of like the family who owned it before, and it said, you know, like it was like a Noddy game for PS2, you know, Noddy and his little yellow car. And it was like, Dad, save 1, like Jamie, save 2. Like, and I was like, oh, it's so sweet, delete. So this is pretty cool, that like you can essentially rip it and save it.
Yeah, and I've got one of my Amiga CD32s I hooked up a while ago, and I think I found a few saves on there. I think there's one from, God, I want to say it was like Gloom or something.
Oh, wow.
And that must have been on there since about 95, 96. I'm quite impressed at the memory on the non-volatile RAM in there has lasted that long without being kind of erased. But generally I get a bit depressed when I find old memory cards and I load them up again, because I'm like, I could never reach this part of the game anymore.
But you know, if you're like a Game Boy user or something, and you're really into Pokemon, and like, you know, you had different periods on all the different Pokemon games and stuff, this can just be absolutely ideal for you. And then you want to play it on like a different system, or you know, you want to transfer it and then have it on an analog pocket or something. You know, it's pretty cool.
So I know there have been other solutions like this before, kind of backup devices. I mean, I'm looking through the comments here on this Nintendo Life article that I'll link up, and people are talking about, you know, the fact that there was ones back in the late 90s where you'd use a serial or a parallel cable and hook it up to a Windows 98 machine and that kind of thing. But I think having something where not only can you connect various different console cartridges to it, but also the fact that it's, what, 70 quid you said this is going to be?
Yeah.
So it's affordable.
And that's the thing, like, yeah, you could do it with a disc doctor and then have it on floppy disk, and then, you know, but are you going to be able to get the saves off that? And, you know, just the fact that also it's like the Retron or something, it does so many different devices. And, yeah, I just like it, the simplicity of it stuff. Now, I don't know how expensive it's going to be if it's getting shipped from Japan and stuff like that, because it does. I've just checked out the Kickstarter, and it does seem to be mostly in Japanese.
Well, it has been backed by the looks of it as well, so I mean, it's definitely going ahead. 209 people have backed this, and it just finished last week at the time of recording this. So, yeah, definitely. I mean, again, if it's something that actually takes off, a lot of these kind of things end up getting, you know, distributors around the world, because it doesn't look like, you know, it's not a massive system. It's not like they're going to have to ship it in like a, you know, a huge like wooden box or anything. Yeah. So, fingers
and
crossed.
Imagine if you've just got some like mad collection or some just random PCBs that you don't even know what they are, and you plug them in and you go, oh, okay, it's that game. Or, you know, oh, it's the developer build of this. You know, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I think even just for that, yeah, backing and dumping cartridges, you know, it's worth having that in your collection just to be able to do that side of it, let alone, you know, the save game functionality of it as well. So, yeah, it looks really good. I think definitely something that we're all going to want in our retro gaming collection. So if you want to get a hold of that, the Kickstarter's finished now. I imagine the backers will be getting it, and we'll keep an eye on anything else we hear from it. We'll link up that and all the stories we talk about in our show notes at theretrohour.com. Now, we were talking about this last week. Let's take a second just to give a quick moment to talk about our latest sponsor of the Retro Hour podcast. And this is a new company who've come on board with a new service. And when we first heard about this, we said, you know, we want to work with you guys because this is something that we really believe in. Now, obviously, you and I, Joe, at the moment are physically not very well, you know, having come down with COVID. But obviously, mental health is something that I think has taken, you know, globally a battering over the last couple of years in particular, with everything, you know, the entire planet's been through. And our sponsor this week is our friends at BetterHelp Online Therapy. And we were talking last week about, you know, some of the stigmas around mental health. And actually, I know that's something that you do in your job, actually, Joe.
Yeah, not to go too far into it with my work and stuff, but I am actually the mental health advocate at work. And, you know, that's not something that I, you know, nominated myself for or anything like that. It was just something that I got put forward to do. And I think that might be because I'm such a strong believer in that we should talk about our mental health, and we shouldn't just bottle it up and, kind of put it to your back of the mind, because of it does make you unhealthy. And going back to what I said last week, I'm a massive, massive believer in, sometimes you don't have to put a label or put a name onto mental health. As I said, me and Dan are feeling physically under the weather right now, but I actually believe that you can be mentally under the weather, and sometimes it isn't necessarily because there's something wrong with you or anything. It's just you're not having a good day or a good week or even a good month or year. And 100%, we should reach out and talk to people about these things, because of it just doesn't go away sometimes, and you shouldn't be afraid to just reach out. And I think BetterHelp is a really good way of doing that, because of some people are, it's all well and good me sitting here and saying you need to reach out and stuff like that, but some people, are worried about reaching out, or, don't want to talk to somebody face to face. So I think this is a really, really good tool, for people to use, because of you can do it over the phone, you can do it over video chat, but you don't have to go on video if you don't want to. You can do it over text. And also, it doesn't have to be a tool to help if you already are feeling unwell. It can be a tool to kind of stop yourself from, spiraling or getting worse, if you will. It's something that is there to help with. Therapy doesn't have to necessarily be something to help fix you. It can be something to help just get you through, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I think that's the thing, that when we were talking to them, they mentioned to us that, all humans have got emotions.
Exactly.
And sometimes you can't avoid them. We just have to learn how to control them and live with them as well. So, we think it's really important that we take care of our mental health as well as our physical health, which is why our good friends at BetterHelp, who are customized online therapy that is a lot more affordable than in-person therapy as well. That's one really important point, because a lot of people think, therapy is for rich people, which it isn't. And actually, you'll get matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. So we want you to give it a try and see why over 2 million people have used BetterHelp online therapy. And of course, we've got you an offer, like we always do. So Retro Hour listeners at the moment can get 10% off the price of their first month. Now, all you have to do, and of course, you're helping out the podcast by taking advantage of these offers, is head to the website betterhelp.com/retro. That's our exclusive link. Use that so they know that we've sent you. betterhelp.com/retro. And a big thank you to our friends at BetterHelp for their support of our show. Right then, while Joe and I go and get back under our duvets, we are going to now just kick back and enjoy listening to Ravi do this week's interview, talking about the voices behind some of our favourite video games of all time, with our special guest this week. Lani Minella is coming up next on the Retro Hour podcast.
You're listening to the Retro Hour podcast, and I'm here with voice artist Lani Minella. How are you doing?
Great, how are you?
Fantastic. We always ask a question of our guests first, and this is kind of like, what was your first video game experience, or the first kind of video game you saw or heard?
You don't know Jack.
Was that the game?
Yeah, it was kind of like a question and answer game that you could play, and it was like watching a contestants play things, and it would ask trivia questions and you would answer them. And that was the first one I saw, and at that time I had a boyfriend that was playing that, and then in the background he would also show me World of Warcraft or something. But You Don't Know Jack, Pong, we're talking arcade stuff though, Miss Pac-Man, those were all the very, very, very first ones. And then I think the first one I actually tried to play was, I believe it was StarCraft.
Oh, wow.
And because I was the Zerg Queen and the medevac pilot, and I'm a terrible gamer, right? I never grew up with someone teaching me the platforms and how to do this and how to do that. I'm really old. I'm ancient. I learned on stone tablets. And so, when I try to figure something out, I remember being at the Electronic Entertainment Expo, and in order to get a T-shirt at the Sony place, you had to play 9 games using the PlayStation, but you didn't know what the button assignment was. And I was just trying to make Crash Bandicoot go up these stairs. I can make him jump up and down, I can make him go forward, but I can't make him jump and go forward. So I just got really frustrated. So I think that with StarCraft, I got rid of I had all the cheat codes, and I had demolished everything on the planet. And it said in order for the Zerg Queen to pupate, you had to deposit her cocoon in the enemy headquarters. And I didn't even know about saving on a game.
So
And
you had to do it in one go.
Oh my God. I'd been playing for 9 hours straight, and I'd gotten to the third level, played through everything possible. And I just took the CD out and threw it against the wall. I said, that's it. So, the next attempt was probably Nancy Drew, thinking that, oh, it's meant for 8 to 15-year-old girls. I can do this, right? Well, after 40 hours and it ended, and it was just a simple, okay, you're done. I thought, I have hit myself on the head with a hammer because it feels good when I stop. This is like, there's so much built-in time wasting, time spending, I should say, and it can be fun, but it's just that the reason I'm not so much of a gamer is because I have so little time that I don't have time to relax and enjoy games as much as I would like.
Well, when did you first realise you had like a talent for doing voices and impressions of people?
Well, probably when I was very little and I had no friends and I was an only child. And so I would probably imitate things on TV that I would see. Like I would be watching Bugs Bunny or something, and I wouldn't be laughing. I would just be intricately imitating things. When I got into school, especially high school, I got in more trouble for that because I'd be imitating the teachers, and I just had too much energy and too much boredom. You know what I mean? I think I was kind of a smart person, and so when things go slowly, I try to amuse people by telling jokes.
We'd have in the UK a whole kind of group of kids that would constantly, and adults that would constantly quote Monty Python, and they would know every single word, and they'd also know every accent, and they'd do the whole scene in one go.
What's so funny? I've always said that no two British people think the other guy's accent is worth a shite, right?
Yeah.
And so even if you say RP and, receive pronunciation, I could tell you that story about the British Water Authority. But the point being is that when I try, and I have a whole worldwide talent pool, okay? And when we do Neverwinter Dungeons and Dragons, oftentimes they say the elves would be British. We tried to get the dwarves Scottish, and we did a good job. But then Wizards of the Coast decided that, oh no, Scotland wasn't invented yet. So we had to take away all the Scottish accents of the dwarves. And anyway, so for the British things, if I have people that are always coming on to me saying, hey, hire me, I'm a voice person, I want to be added to your roster. Well, I will ask them what accents they do. And if they say they do a British accent, I'll say, can you give me an example? And they all go into Monty Python. I'm thinking okay, take the pink hanky out of your sleeve. And no, that's not what we can do. So it's pretty funny.
Well, you ended up working on radio and stuff. What was that like? Because we had a history of as you said, Monty Python and stuff, and Kenny Everett and all these kind of voices and impressions on radio.
Yes. Radio, when you do morning drive radio, which I was stuck in, you get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and we had to actually work in Tijuana, Mexico for the biggest station that reached all the way from Rosarita Beach to Santa Barbara, which is quite a distance. And anyway, when we worked down there and the morning drive, you have to be spontaneous and whoever's in the news. So I was kind of the go-to person to imitate things. I remember before I even got a job, they would call me up at 5 a.m. because they didn't have a shtick, or maybe 6 o'clock, and say, okay, today is the first day that the lottery is starting. So be Dr. Ruth Westheimer, who's that sex psychologist or whatever, and I'm going to be back in 2 minutes and make up a shtick, how to choose lottery numbers based on sexual organs or something. And so I would have to say, well, anybody who is as short and ugly and looks like me can have sex. Well, anybody can. So it was a very spontaneous, never planned kind of a thing where we always had to be doing voices, impersonation. Oh, Joan Rivers, can we talk? I've had so many facelifts that my boobs are on my shoulder pads, So I was Joan Rivers and Katharine Hepburn and all kinds of weird things. And that's how that kind of got started. And that's what led to certain people like GT Interactive hearing me do these imitations and asking me if I could imitate Fern Gully, the movie people, which I had never heard of, because they were pitching the Laserdisc to Philips and Magnavox. I go back that far, actually farther, but that's a long way back.
Yeah, because a Laserdisc was really big, but in the UK it was kind of like a really expensive, oddity. But what was that like then? Because Magnavox had a big kind of legacy with televisions and even video game consoles and Panasonic as well.
Yes, well, GT Interactive was also into making interactive television, and I was part of that. I was a vampire that the guy had me reading off a teleprompter. I never even saw the script before. I was all dressed up like the vampire with actual fangs that were made for me. And you'd be asking trivia questions, and I'd be pulling some imaginary lever, and it'd be a multiple choice. And people would have remote controls that they could choose and play, live.
Was that over cable then? Or?
I guess so. And it didn't end up going anywhere, but they had a select audience. They were meant to have it go. Maybe it was nationwide, I don't know. But at that time, when I was there, that was up in Los Angeles. And I remember that, they had a Carlsbad office, which is in San Diego. And that was what was doing this Dragon arcade game that later became
Dragon's Lair?
And Dragon's Lair. Yeah, you're right. Exactly. So I worked on that. And then they said, you're really good. Why don't you go downstairs? We're working on some kids' CD-ROMs. I didn't even know what a CD-ROM was. I swear. I'm like that clueless. So those kids' games were like, one of them was called Night and Day. And it was sort of like how kids' imagination turns things like faucets, which looks like a faucet during the day, but then you have a nighttime screen and they could imagine it being a scary dragon. You know what I mean? And so you would click on things and it would make noises. And believe it or not, I would have to be, say Lost and Found was a click game, kind of like Where's Waldo. But I would have to write these rhyming clues, like I am a chair and I'm painted red. You better find me before you're dead. Whatever. I have to be all these voices of different things that people would have to search out. And then I said, hey, who else does these CD-ROMs? I don't know. Well, having been a producer and worked in radio, I said, well, who would know? I don't know. Why don't you go to the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas? Okay. So I went to the CES and handed out my cassettes and what have you, and did that for a couple of years, and it really wasn't that productive, and because I don't bug people. And then I went to Game Developers Conference for a couple of years, and I spoke at one of them. And I went to 13 E3s. I don't remember which E3 it was, but there was some girl behind me, and you'd wait for the guy to finish demoing their game. Because most of the people that would hire me are not at these trade shows. These are the demonstrator people. These are the marketing guys, right? And the producers are generally not there. And so I remember some girl behind me going, I can do voices too. And the producer the demo guy gave her a blank look, and it made me think, I should make a one-stop shop where I can bring all the worldwide talent together and make it easy, and I'll do all the paperwork and all the payment and do all the tax stuff, and I can direct, and we'll make it easy. I can even write some of the scripts and stuff, and that's how Audio Gods got started. It was just, I guess I got known as, if it's impossible and you have no budget, give it to Lani.
I guess it was an emerging area because, like you said, with Dragon's Lair, that was really ahead of its time. So they had this. It was notorious because the arcade would always break because it was a giant laser disc, and you'd have it in the arcade, and it was the one that was always broken, but everybody wanted to use it. So
oh my gosh,
it must have been kind of hard to just even convince people that it was worth getting someone on to do voice back then.
Well, I think that when it became the game, I remember auditioning for it, and they had a big thick script, and it was, you went to this guy's little house. It was a converted house, and I walk in the room, and the casting guy says, oh, she's really talented. And I said, well, what parts do you want me to read for? And they go, well, you can read for whatever you want. And I opened it up, and there was like a wood elf. I said, can I do a wood elf? Oh, no, that's a guy's part. Well, I could be a guy if you wanted me to. And they went, what? And so then they said, why don't you try the princess part? Oh, anybody can be a princess, da da da. So they said, all right, try this other one. I did. And they just threw the whole script on the ground. And I thought, uh-oh, I've ticked somebody off. What did I do wrong? Christ, you could probably do this whole thing yourself. And they acted like they were mad at me, you know? So they were going to have Mark Harmon be the part of the prince. And they were going to go union at the last minute. Mark, you know, backed out of it. But yeah, weird things happen in this business.
So you'd set your company up, and then kind of that was during around 1992. So that was a period when CD-ROM actually just started getting into people's hands, and the PC scene was starting to get really big. Did you you kind of got involved with Duke Nukem, and and you became the voice director on that game. How did that happen?
Well, I don't remember how I did meet George Broussard, who was the president who owned Apogee 3D ROMs. And I think he reached out and said, I'm looking for a male part for this game we're working on. And he wanted it to sound like some sound clip that he sent me from Full Metal Jacket. And I said,
that's a great film. That is, yeah.
I said, well, you know, that's easy. I know just the guy. Took it to John St. John, and he did it. And they said, fine. And Duke became quite a sensation for they kind of ripped off Bruce Campbell's script from Living Dead, you know, but people started downloading the prompts, like "Come Get Some," because they thought it was kind of sexually oriented, you know. So I remember people were using that for their computer prompts.
Well,
back in the day,
he was like the ultimate dude, Duke was, and having that voice was an element that wasn't in there before that really added to it.
And what's really funny is that John St. John can do amazing voices. Every character of The Simpsons and Roger Rabbit and all kinds. He was Alan Rickman's voice in Die Hard trilogy. Wow. So I remember we had more fun because I would play some female parts in Duke Nukem, and John and I are pretty spontaneous improvising. And I remember we were improvising an orgasm scene because he improv the line, I'm going to rip your head off and down your neck, you know. And so they actually animated to it. And so I remember, you know, he was going, oh, baby, oh, Duke, oh, yeah, baby, oh.
Well, kind of talking of that was a bit where, like, video games kind of started to turn adult, and, you know, like, they were appealing for the older group, but as well as kind of younger teenagers. You did stuff like Shadow Warrior as well, and a few of those first-person shooter games as well.
God, that's one I don't remember. I mean, there was a lot of weird games that we did. Forsaken was one that Acclaim did, and they actually had me do a swearing patch. I had to be the most vulgar, but I had to be gender neutral so that my sexual offensive remarks could apply to either gender. Okay. And in the characters that were in there, like a Chinese lady and everything, doing a sexual insult patch.
Wow, it really was the 90s, wasn't it? Kind of back then.
Yeah, I won't say it because you said that we should keep it clean. But I had to make up those things on the fly, and I could not imagine how they would market that. But, you know, that's what we do. Typically, not too many people know how us voice actors,
they were definitely aiming for edgy stuff back then, weren't they? To try and push the games and sell them. You know.
One thing that most people don't realize is that if you're going to credit a voice actor or an actor, I don't care if it's an on-screen actor for television and movies, credit the script or discredit the script first, because that is where it all starts. And it can be a pile of poo, and you can gold plate it, but it's still going to sound like a pile of crap, you know? And so I think that the scripts that we saw in games, for example, when we did Unreal, the Unreal tournaments, that was back when you had so little memory, you know, that they couldn't have as many taunts. So, you know, I gave them like 50 taunts, but they would have stuff like, is that your liver over there? I'm like, that's lame. How about, you know, your face, your ass, what's the difference? Or something like that. And the point was that the memory also, I remember doing StarCraft, the first one.
Yeah.
I was in the office. We weren't even in a studio. The Glenn Stafford was the music guy whose wife happened to be an airline stewardess. And so we were thinking of, you know, when you click on a character, you get the annoyance factor reactions. That's where you can put some comedy in. And I've always thought that games should have more wit and humor in them. But he would say, caution when exiting, your luggage may shift. And I would say, if you're going to hurl chunks, use a vomit bag in front of you. Or in the event of a water landing, you too can be used as a flotation device. You know, so those are the things that people talk about. And that's what started becoming missing later. You know what I mean? They started taking away like I know when you're playing StarCraft, you could get into some science, you could click on some science ship, and you would hear me as Adria the Witch from Diablo saying, I sense a soul in search of answers. And people would talk about that.
Yeah.
You know, because it was an unexpected surprise and a pleasant surprise rather than just having, I've got a bad feeling about this. I mean, how many times have we heard that in games?
And you did Diablo 1 and 2 as well as
right.
StarCraft, which are both like amazing titles, you know, really pioneering in the strategy world.
I think World of Warcraft was the first claim to fame where I was at GDC and people said, oh, my producer wants to meet you because you're the witch and the peg leg boy and you know, whatever. But I was the Banshee and the Succubus and the Harpy and Mireless Stormclaw and Zayla the Dragon Maw and all these other characters in many different World of Warcraft. And also one of the most annoying but iconic voices of Syndra Ghost of the Dragon, which they also brought her back in Hearthstone, the card game. And she was just screaming all the time. And and that's the same. I think you wanted to ask me about Bubsy. And,
Bubsy. We've got a bit of a joke on the podcast where one of our hosts, his wife really loves Bubsy, and we're always taking the mick out of Bubsy and saying this isn't the best game, you know, Bubsy 3D.
Okay, I'll give you the as quick as I can what happened there. I love it when I'm brought up to do something and I don't know what I'm going to do. Like when I did all these monster voices for It Chapter 2, the movie. Someone recommended me. When I did the infected and the clicker and the bloater for Last of Us, someone recommended me. I didn't know. When I'm doing Skyrim, and they just they said, okay, you're a dark elf, so be British and have a deep voice and be a bitch. And they would show me the line, flash it on a screen. I didn't know anything about the game. I knew nothing about the context. I thought she was going to be a companion. It turned out they gave that voice to all the Dunmere females. So I was Janessa and this and that and whatever later. I could have done different voices, but that's what happened. You know what I mean? So I don't know, weird things happen. But Bubsy, 3DO was the company, and they paid for my flight. I always go up and back the same day wherever I'm going, whether it's to go to Nintendo in Washington and work on Smash Brothers as Lucas or, you know, whatever. I'm always up and back the same day. And so with Bubsy, I'm in the studio, I've got these headphones on, and they say, okay, we like this voice and we want you to imitate it. Oh my God, it hurt my ears to hear it. I mean, you're like, Bubsy, okay, we're Bubsy on 3D. Oh my God. I mean, are you sure? You want something as annoying as that? You know, and they went, yeah, and I just couldn't believe it. I'm shaking my head the whole time. And, you know, my ears are bleeding practically after doing this thing for so long. But, you know, of all my 14-page resume, when somebody picks Bubsy out, I'm going, really? Really?
Yeah.
You had to pick that one? Okay.
Don't ask me about Bubsy.
Well, see, the thing is that we don't know anything about most all of the games that we do. I don't care what game it is. We don't know any backstory. We don't necessarily have to. And some of us have never seen the script before we get it and have to perform. And, you know, I remember there was going to be a game out by Blizzard, and it never came out. And it was Alex Strasser was a dragon, and she was supposed to be the queen of all dragons, and very big. And we were recording at a studio that Sierra and Blizzard owned, but they were using it for Fisher-Price games like Math Blaster and Fisher-Price ABCs and all that. So the engineer was a guy used to working on kiddie stuff. And now he had the big guys with the AC/DC black T-shirts, and so we had met outside in the lobby area discussing what kind of a voice we could give this queen of all dragons. And first we were thinking Alexstrasza is Russian, so maybe we can make her Russian. Or, maybe we can make her, all these ideas that were very tough, maybe we could make her monstrous. Okay, we get in there and the guy is talking with them and they wouldn't let me talk. I couldn't hear what they're saying. And finally he gets on the mic and he goes, Lani, we decided that she is so powerful that you don't have to sound powerful, just be yourself. What? Okay. So my first line was looking down at an orc. I didn't know what an orc was. And they're saying, he's like an ant compared to you in size. And orcs are usually pretty big, things. And so my first line was, how could you possibly be of use to me? And the guy kept saying, can you pull it back? Okay, how could you? And he kept saying, can you pull it back? Pretty soon I'm talking out of my butt. You know what I mean? I'm pulled back so much that I had no power, no nothing. And it was just amazing. A lot of these things happen because of people's ideas, and then we actors get blamed for them. Like Bubsy!
Well, I was wondering as well, like you did Steven Spielberg's director's chair, which was really pioneering. I think it had Penn and Teller in it as well.
I didn't know that, but I know that I don't think that there was much writing there. I mean, it came across, it was good. We did Clive Barker's Undying too, which was very interesting. But Spielberg came out before its time. So correct me if I'm wrong. Most people didn't have adequate computers to play it.
Yeah, it was really early, and it was like one of the kind of interactive FMV kind of titles. Yeah.
Well, also, people were complaining. I remember the major complaint about it was that the guns that you would use to shoot things had very poor sights. So they were old guns, and so if you aimed correctly, you'd be off.
Okay.
And people were really mad about that because they couldn't kill what they were supposed to kill.
Well, one of my favorite titles was Die Hard Trilogy as well, and you mentioned that earlier. What was it like, kind of having film references and be able to?
Oh, we didn't. They made me. I had to buy it myself. I had to buy all of them and tape it on a VHS, and then transfer some of the stuff myself onto a cassette and play it for the people for reference. No, they didn't supply us with anything. It was Fox. Probe did it in England. And there was another guy, I won't mention his name, but he was working in America for Fox, and they had to approve it, right? So we sent them some sound samples of what we had, but he wouldn't even give me his phone number. And then also, Probe was a little bit naive in that day, and I'm not good with paperwork. I'm terrible, I'll do the work first. I'm really terrible with money. But they had a contract that said, we own the rights throughout the galaxy. Which negates it. It negates it legally right then and there. I didn't know anything about that, but they were happy with everything, and we got actually a sound designer. Jamie Scott was Bruce Willis. Yeah, so I kind of trained him how to be Bruce. He did a damn good job.
The voices were really like accurate in that, even though it was all impersonations of people.
And I remember this is the first time where I learned about emotes, exertions, and things like that, because we were supposed to. Now, this is more action specific. In the old days, we would have to show different being attacked and being hurt by different things: throat slash, jumping in hot lava, hit on the head. Nowadays, it's just light, medium, and heavy. Okay, It's not fun anymore. But back in those days, we had to differentiate, and I swear this is absolutely correct, between being hit by a bullet, a grenade, or a rocket launcher. And I said, really? We have to make a sound being hit by a grenade? But that's how big it had to be. Everything was way over the top.
And I guess
that's like, the movies that make a gun sound like a cannon. That's all started. And there was a big competition between sound designers for movies and games. One was always trying to outdo and be bigger than the other. And this is where it all started in games.
I guess kind of trying to put that level of emotion and expression, and back then you had smaller kind of samples and stuff. You must have really had to, go for it when you're getting hit by something, or really, really, kind of go out there.
Would you like me to illustrate?
Yeah. You did Unreal Tournament. Did you do one of the kind of getting shot sounds on there?
I did lots of juggernauts. I did the opening announcer, and they wanted it like a soccer mom and a sexy British lady and a blah 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 blah. It was insane. But yeah, a lot of the tough stuff, like when you're hitting, it's usually now when you're getting hurt is there you go.
That takes me back to those days. Yeah, one thing I loved about Unreal Tournament as well was the kind of the different kills, headshots and then like multi-kill, and that really added fun to the game.
I got to tell you, there was this guy that was doing the announcer voice, and it was going to be pitched down and everything from his normal voice, and they wanted it very flat. Everything would be like, now, red team wins the match. So you couldn't show any favoritism. It was like, yellow team wins the match, da-da-da. And this guy used to be a radio puker. He was kind of like John St. John had his radio days. Like, this is John St. John. Well, this guy also wanted to put red team wins them, because he used to be the announcer for the Cincinnati Bengals or something. You know what I mean? So I had to keep him and John flat, say, as you're talking, make your hand go across in a horizontal line, so you can't go that kind of deal. So that's where we would do the death match, and all that kind of stuff had to be very neutral, because this guy and John would turn Duke, instead of being kind of like a Clint Eastwood, like, come get some, come get some. so that's where
American sports announcer style. Yeah.
And it's very hard. Once a radio puker, always a radio puker. It's hard to get them not to, because in the old days, not everybody had a deep voice. So they learned to go to the Columbia School of Broadcasting to talk like that. And that's what we call the radio puker. And so when you have people over enunciating and making everything sound like Sunday, 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 that kind of thing, it makes it harder to make them a believable character. And this has gone so far in the opposite direction now. Games are asking for total realism, nothing over the top. And this may work if you had some overly animated cinematics that are interesting to watch. But when you're doing a top-down thing, which most games are, and there's no cutscene, or maybe you're a talking head with chewing gum lip flap that's telling you it's up to you to bring the 3 gems to the blacksmith in Arendelle, you know what I mean? These, I think you should always have a little more interest, but now we've gone full circle. So now people just want you to kind of be kind of deadpan.
Yeah, I kind of enjoyed that campness and that kind of, just total out there fun that they had back then. I was wondering, how did you go about kind of creating alien voices or like a language, something that doesn't exist,
Yeah, I'm pretty good at that. I don't know. I mean, my method might be thinking of a word like, first you have to figure what kind of creature is it. Because I've done several things, whether they be clicky type of things or garbly type of things or whatever. So first you got to know, like I was the Tuskar, which is like a walrusy looking things in World of Warcraft, right? And they had their own language, but whoever wrote it on the script wrote nothing but consonants. Like CNRRGDDW. I'm like, what? So am I supposed to be saying something? So shouldn't I have the same amount of words in whatever I'm making up? Like if you're saying like, get away from me, whatever. Should I do, whatever? You just kind of make up this garbage, just I guess they would like in Game of Thrones. They actually had a language, and Klingons have their own language, but it kind of has to be set to what kind of creature that it is. And when I'm let loose, I can do pretty well. But the only problem is if they have other creatures, which generally doesn't happen. If you have a whole race of creatures, it's typically you only have one that's doing their own alien language. Otherwise, everyone would have to speak the same alien language.
You also mentioned that you did some stuff with Psygnosis, and you came over to England, and also the Waterboard Authority, which sounds really interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So SCI, Sales Curve Interactive, I think, one of the few companies that was owned by a woman, Jane I forgot her last name. Wonderful lady. They flew me over to record the American part because they had the British comedian doing the other male main player part.
Yep.
And I remember, I landed in London and then went to Southampton. And we went to New Forest. Have you ever been to New Forest?
No, but I hear it's lovely. One place I need to visit.
Well, picture this. Southampton is kind of a small thing. You can look out over the sea and see the Isle of Man way in the distance. But New Forest was a 2-rut road. You know what I mean? Dirt with the grass growing in the middle. And we would be driving, and there was a Scottish guy and an English guy, and they all hated each other's accent. It was just a load of fun. But we would be driving by a bus stop, and a donkey would be actually sitting on the bench, And then there was some famous restaurant, I think we ate at it later, owned by a British prince, and he had all these large old cars like Duesenbergs and these fancy cars parked out in front. And then we went on this 2-lane. You couldn't pass anybody because it was just this thing that would,
you have to stop and wait for them to drive.
Yeah. But there was trees and bushes on each side, so I don't know how anybody would have passed anybody. But we finally get to this guy's house, and he had a lovely studio, and I'm recording there, and somebody right next door had a business of winding the tape on cassettes to make blank cassettes. That was his business. And so he comes over and he says, excuse me, do you do a British accent by any chance? I said, sure. And he said, oh, good. Well, here's the script. I need this for the British Water Authority, and they're going to be broadcasting this on loudspeakers on top of trucks and taxis and cabs and whatever around town, all over England. And so it's something like, I don't remember the message. It was that was in 95. And it was something like, may we have your attention, please? This is the British Water Authority, and we need to conserve water between the hours of blah, blah, and blah, blah. Thank you very much. This is being the British Water Authority, blah, blah, blah. So I was actually the voice of the British Water Authority.
I think that was probably, we had a thing called the hosepipe ban, which was where too many people were using hosepipes to wash their car. So maybe it was when they were limiting the amount of water, but they did some kind of mad announcement scheme.
Yeah, we've had that over here where we have rationing or something. We're supposed to not run sprinklers at certain days of the week because California is notorious for drought.
Yeah.
And so we've had that, but we never had it announced on loudspeakers. It would just show it on the news report or something like that. But I was in an animated movie called The Queen's Corgi, and I was actually trying out for Queen Elizabeth. And and I was doing a great job, but I said, do you want her young or do you want her, we want her over the top. Really? Well, because Queen Elizabeth is not over the top.
Yeah.
So, but they wanted that. I didn't get it, but the 3 other British people that were actually, UK, thought I did a marvelous job. I ended up being a Scottish stable boy. There's some of this on YouTube, Oh, really? How did you show up? It was just weird, but it was a fun thing. But believe it or not, that movie had Donald Trump in it. Oh my gosh. It's a fun movie. It's kind of like a talking dog.
I think I've seen it on Netflix, just pop up. It's CGI, isn't it?
Well, yeah. If you look up Lani Minella, Queen's Corgi, you'll see my little Scottish part in there. But it was fun, and so I just enjoy the sense of humor, the British sense of humor too. And being in England, I remember it was about March or May, and the sun never set. It was like it always looked like it was 2:00 in the afternoon. And the thing I remember too is that soft drinks. I'm used to drinking Diet Coke out of an aluminum can, and there they would limit you to 1 square of ice in a glass. I'm thinking, I don't want my Coke in a glass, but that was it was a lot of fun. I really appreciate that. And then, you want to know about Psygnosis? Yeah. Well, see, that was the thing. I was working 6 days in Southampton, and then I took the train up to London to work for Psygnosis. And that at that time, I knew nothing. I still knew nothing about the game. I was just a bunch of different parts and different accents. And then I left the next day and went back to America. But it was funny when they were saying, do a cross between these two accents. I'm like, okay, how would that happen? They said,
But which title was that for Psygnosis?
Ring Cycle. I don't know if it ever came out, but that's what it was.
Well, another huge series that you did was Nancy Drew, and amazingly, like her Interactive, they came from American Laser Games, which were the kind of Laserdisc pioneers that did Mad Dog McCree and stuff like that previously. So they had that kind of interactive video connection. What was it like doing that series?
It was quite interesting because Nancy was not allowed to be cool or hip or be, what would you call it, confrontational when she was asking questions of things. She was always had to be Miss Goody Two Shoes. You know what I mean? Nicey. I couldn't even say things like, whoa, that was too cool. I'd probably have to say, gee, or whatever. But
the kind of geeky
well,
vibe.
it was to try to appeal to 8 to 15-year-old girls and be all and you know what is amazing to me is I never realized how many I hate even saying this, how many fans that I have, but they're still to this day, they're writing me to do a congratulations or a happy birthday or some sort of mystery thing for their wife or their girlfriend or their boyfriend or some gay couple getting married. You know what I mean? They will have me do these clips, which I do for free. And so I'm glad that she still has some life. But in the old games, the writers were just fabulous. And you could inadvertently learn math by having to feed horses different amounts of things for which you did not have the accurate measuring cups for. So you would learn what would total the amount by mixing certain amounts of measuring cups, or they would have things of observing different birds or identifying different things. And then as it got later and later, it just became a bunch of puzzles, which was okay, but you didn't really learn anything. And then they went to the Unity engine and fired everybody, including me. And I think that's kind of where it rests. I'm not sure they're going to be back with anything.
Well, something totally different to Nancy Drew was kind of these legacy titles, which would be like Soul Blade and Mortal Kombat as well. So you were on the recent titles of those, and
no, I was only on Mortal Kombat 9.
9, okay.
I was Sindel and Shiva for that.
Nice.
And I didn't know anything about Warner Brothers was there and in the LA studios. And it was so funny because I didn't know any of the story about it at all. I didn't even know how the game played. So later when I saw the YouTube clips and how actually I'd be fighting myself, I would be Sindel ripping Shiva apart. And she, how they rip each other from the head.
It's brutal,
in half.
isn't it?
It is so gory. I'm going, oh my God. So the emotes were probably, the exertions were probably the most, the set was not your typical attack, being attacked, die. There'd be stuff like, you jump, somersault. Somersault? Okay. Or land and flip over. Okay. So it was fun. And then I got done with Sindel and we did Shiva. And they said, okay, that's a wrap. I mean, wait a minute. Doesn't Shiva have exertions? Oh, you can do exertions in a different voice? Well, duh. Really? Nobody else has been able to do that. And it was Technicolor Studios at the time, which is one of the bigger LA studios. They're gone now, but they were chasing after me because I guess that was some unique ability that I didn't realize not everybody had.
But you were also Ivy as well, weren't you?
Oh, yes. I remember Ivy. There was a first Ivy that they brought me up and say, we want you to kind of sound like this. And with a British accent is fine. But there are certain sentences that are not conducive to a British accent, like see them or something, or whatever. So I remember there was a little Japanese guy, and he was coming in the room with me to show me what to do for exertions. And he goes, okay, the first time you do a little exertion, like maybe you stab with a knife, just go, huh, huh, huh. I said, oh, you mean like, huh, ha, huh, ha, huh. And he goes, oh, you have done this before?
Ah, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And the same thing, I got to tell you a cute story with Sonic.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Because
All right.
you did a bit on Sonic as well, didn't you?
Yeah, I was Rouge the Bat for Sonic Adventures, and we worked on Sonic Heroes as well. But the funny part about it was that the Japanese people had not recorded any Japanese before they had animated it. So the animators would put in big wow, like mouth things, and it was inappropriate to what we were saying at the time. And so they finally we had to roll 3/4-inch tape and back it up to watch the scene, and it would just be totally not matching where the stuff, and they would go, oh, it's okay, just make it last as long as the Japanese symbols are on the screen. So if you ever have a problem with thinking that the lip flap wasn't big, now you know why. It is because there was no Japanese recorded.
So kind of like bad dubbing, where it was the mouth didn't actually match what was coming out of it. Right.
So Amy would be walking along going, I say, can she go do, 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 do? No, we can't say anything. So she'd be walking along this very boring hedge, and her mouth would all of a sudden go, wow. And then she'd walk along some more, and then the monster would come, and her mouth wouldn't open at all. I'm thinking, okay, she needs to yawn or do something because her mouth is open. Nope, can't have that. Can we make some noises for the monsters? Nope, can't have that. No room. I'm thinking like, okay, well, that was a kind of an interesting thing. They wanted the people to actually look like the characters. Naka-san was an interesting guy, and I said they made us do a whole other audition after they'd already chosen the voices, and John St. John was Biggie, okay, the big fat cat.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, it was a mess, a complete mess, because I forbade Naka from seeing the people that were coming by. Who in the hell is going to look like an echidna?
Yeah.
They said that John St. John wasn't fat enough. I'm thinking, yeah, we're going to have a hedgehog, a guy with quills coming out of him,
with blue hair.
We're going to have that. Yeah, and then it was one of the first times where they'd always let women do the kids' voices. Hey, Sonic, Tails, whatever. They always use that, but this is the one time where they wanted to use real kids. And I warned them against that. I said, number one, they take longer to do. Number two, their voices can change if you have sequels. And nope, they still want to do that. And we had to go through 3 kids because they reached puberty. The funny part in studio when I was doing Rouge was there was a part that she was supposed to sound like she's climbing up a cliff. And I know how to go like, oh, no. It's like this. And the guy would hold his hand up like you're giving a V sign, like a victory sign, and he'd hook his 2 fingers over and go, huh. And I go, that is climbing a cliff? Yes. Okay, so I went, huh. No, like this. And he would make that same gesture. I'm doing exactly the same sound that he's doing. But he finally comes in the studio, where I am. He comes in my space, stands behind me, and does the little. And you know what I realized? All I was missing was the gesture. So I made the gesture and did the same sound. He goes, yes.
It's like no one's going to see the gesture. Yeah.
Exactly. But the point, too, is that they had Sonic drowning by saying blub, blub. That's like having a horse say neigh, neigh, And I said, can we make him go blub, blub? No. He has to say blub, blub. Yes, okay. And that's all I said. And then I was deemed as being difficult to work with.
Yeah, that's really interesting because that was like a period where it was going 3D and the transition was always a bit painful going into
Well, you remember
kind of 3D
the terrible... Mode. Do you remember one of the most iconic memes or whatever was all your bass are belong to us?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Well, that's a great example of the bad scripts, you know what I mean? But how they become iconic because they are so bad. And I've had many games like that, Ill Bleed, and where they go, Johnny, Johnny, ugh, Johnny, ugh. You know, you're just like, what the heck?
And I guess it's all different regions as well. So, do you speak any other languages? Do you have to do like?
No, we don't. We
voice in other
could
languages?
do localization, but it's been hard because, and yes, a lot of our games, when I do Neverwinter, it gets localized to many different languages, and so we have to record our stuff to send over wherever they're doing the localization so they sound like us. But the problem is, I think a lot of people, for example, I've worked with a company in Finland, and they spoke really good English, and they got their English from watching old American TV shows like Knight Rider.
Ah, okay.
So I think it's better if sometimes, because of the cultural difference in acting, such as German, they kind of act like machine gun, because I know, because I've gotten the German stuff to listen to. And they would choose voice number 1 can do these 9 parts, can be all the same voice because they're not in the same scene together. Are you kidding? Okay, but we don't do things that way. But culturally, even the Japanese, they would speak more a different way in the cadence. And, Asian people, more respectful, things of that. I'm not talking like chicken number 5. I'm not talking like that. I'm just talking about more ceremonious. And the Germans are much more attack, da, 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 da. And so localizing, I think, is probably beneficial when it's subtitled in the language, and then they can hear the English acting. But it's okay.
And I guess it's like you said with the British thing, where it's not everybody's that kind of stereotypical pronounced English. There's a lot of regional stuff in there as well, and with every language, there's a kind of regional vibe, or there's a different.
Well, the thing you don't want to do, you can really offend people. We did like I told you, we did the Hitler game and all that stuff, and we had somebody that was German in there, and because you can have Bavarian and Austrian and everything speaking German, because of what happened in the war, I guess the situation between Austria and Germany not being good, or let's just say Korea and Japan not being great, you have to be careful.
Yeah.
Because you can't sound like Arnold. You can't sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You're going to offend a German.
Yeah,
exactly.
What I'm
saying?
Yeah.
So it's a strange thing that you have to be kind of neutral. And even I studied German and Spanish, and I studied from Günther Schulz, who would say that CHs are pronounced ich liebe dich, not ich liebe dich. And there's a difference of Bavaria, having the sh instead of the ch kind of a sound. So you have to be, when a company called LocalSoft, which is a localization company in Spain, they would get their Spanish recorded, believe it or not, in the Canary Islands.
Wow.
Because they said they had the most neutral Spanish speaking, because there's all kinds of Cuban influence when you get near Florida.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's all these different things. But I'd say when we're asked for a British accent, generally they're not going to specify, like West End or Croydon or something of that nature. It's going to be more along the Lord of the Rings, you know what I mean? More the Galadriel, the RP thing, the Jean-Luc Picard of Star Trek.
Harry Potter,
kind
of, yeah.
Yeah, it's not going to be allowed, because that's another thing that Americans, the theater has turned Cockney, which is not, it's just a rhyming language, like apples and pears or stairs, It's not, hello, what's the matter with you? That's like Mary Poppins, but
yeah.
that
famously,
got started.
Dick Van Dyke was the big one. Yeah, that was.
I know. And so that is, again, when people say Cockney, I don't think they realize they mean the American bastardization of what theater did to that thing. But we don't have any call for it. As a matter of fact, most games don't even ask for French accents unless they're prostitutes.
Oh God,
or something.
I could imagine with kind of like the pandemic and stuff. Has working remotely been a big change, and do people still kind of prefer in studio work, or is working remotely becoming a lot more of a thing for you?
I'll tell you, they always want you to have Source Connect paid. I don't have it. I go to another studio when they want that. And that's how you can be in one place and record like you're doing, you know what I mean? You're recording somewhere else. But to me, that you will get a line loss when you do that. Just like ISDN is kind of a thing of the past, but you can use IPDTL to hook up to somebody else's ISDN. But what they always do when they have that in a session where you are somewhere, but it's your equipment and you're simultaneously recording somewhere else, is they'll have you save the file and then upload the raw file later, so there's no loss. Okay. So I will tell you this though, it's changing. We're being asked, like I'm still asked to go to LA to work for Blizzard, or I just worked on a Marvel title, and so I was in the studio. The people directing me are remote, so I have to travel quite a distance. I don't mind. I will do it, no problem. But they're making the talent be in the studio, but everybody else is at home. And I don't think there's anybody else.
That must be surreal. Are they like on a screen or something then?
Well, one director was on a screen, the other one was just a still picture. And then I remember for was it Hearthstone? Yeah, Hearthstone, which is not out yet. I mean, I've been in several Hearthstones, but the one that I most recently worked on, there was 2 women, and I didn't even know who they were. They weren't regular directors. I think they were designers or something. And they were just, the engineer would show me a picture, and then they would give their 2 cents on it and have you do it that way. So, it's interesting because they used to have guest directors, and that'd be making sense because the director would be there and, maybe I like to move and I don't care. I'm not trying to show off or do anything be on camera. But the point is that nowadays there's a mix of Source Connect being used a lot. But when people are now making you kind of go into the studio, and it's okay. I'm not that afraid of the pandemic. Everything is got to be approved for health standards.
Yeah, and I guess they need that studio surrounding as well to have the the kind of.
Well, you would think so, but how are you going to get it with Source Connect? Now, there's another thing that another company was doing, and they were providing. If you lived in LA, they would provide you with a remote recording unit. I'm thinking, but I had to drive up to Encino to record at their studio for consistency. And in my mind, I'm thinking, how are you going to have consistency with people with a remote recording unit when they're in different environments? But that's another thing that's happening. If it's convenient, they will send out a rig. Because a lot of voice talents, especially celebrities, they are not engineers like we have to be. We have to learn how to record ourselves and set the right levels and use a microphone and all that kind of stuff, which a lot of people were used to just letting the studio do that. So that's imperative right now. You have to learn how to use the software and how to set levels and get a clean recording no matter what. Because whether or not we're connected with Source Connect or recording on our own, it's got to be, comparable and sound dry, like somebody's not recording in a bathroom or with a parakeet chirping in the background or something like that. So that's part of being a voice actor now, is being your own engineer and having decent equipment.
Well, I was wondering, you've done a lot of video game titles. I was wondering, what's been your most enjoyable and kind of favorite game voice that you've ever done?
I think being the monsters, the end bosses, the dragons. I was in Rift and all the stuff in Warcraft, and but also I think the weirdest one was Last of Us, and that was the cordyceps, infection that would turn these things into basically walking mushrooms or something at different stages of infection. And when I was brought in, somebody from Blizzard had recommended me, and I didn't know what I was doing. And at that time, they didn't have anything really except stick figures, the avatars, going through everything from choking, falling down, writhing on the ground, throwing up. All this was in a sequence that might last about 2 minutes, and I was doing the whole thing. And at the end, it's kind of like an energized zombie, that kind of thing. So I said, I can be a lot more scary than this. And they said, oh, really? Well, we're out of time now, but we have these clickers, and they communicate making clicks. So why don't you imagine yourself being with other clickers surrounding a table with a man strapped to it, and you want to have sex with him? Go. I'm like, huh? Then, you can do clicking by going out or in. And so I did that. Then they didn't have me for the clicker for that one. That was the next release. But on the way home, the agent called and said, they want you for the bloater. And that was the end boss. And I didn't know what it was going to look like. So I managed to get it to record in San Diego. And I go in and they said, okay, we imagine it to be like a sea mammal, like a seal having sex. Go. I'm like, what's with this having sex stuff, you know? So those are the, we have to, because I told them, I've watched enough nature programs that usually male seals only make noise when they're fighting other male seals. Mm. And so I had to imagine something like and do this for an hour.
But those are iconic characters as well. Like those games, Last of Us, are like just absolutely amazing. Like they've been such a huge success.
Well, then for the second game, when I came for the clicker, they had the clickers animated, and so they would play the whole scenario of me like banging into walls and running down alleys and doing all this other kind of stuff, and that was interesting to do. It really does get the heart rate up because you have a rubber cap on and lavalier mics, lav mics attached to your forehead, and they do that so they think you can be not getting off axis of the mic. So they expect you to be moving a lot, which has surprised me. But when you're exerting a lot of energy, the heat normally escapes off your head. So when you have a cap on, you get overheated pretty darn quickly. But I enjoy things like that and making up the foreign languages. And I just think it's the thing where I flap my chords like that is something that not a lot of people can do. And when it gets pitched down, it sounds neat. Because a lot of times when guys try to be low and tough, when they get pitched down, it sounds all retarded. Yeah, it sounds really like, no, I'm really stupid. So that's something that I'm kind of iconically known for. But so anytime I have something that's evil, wicked, mean, and bad and nasty, I prefer that rather than being, oh, hello, I'm Nancy Drew. Hi, we're here at Castle Malloy. I mean, I liked it. I really appreciate being Nancy Drew for that many games, but I kind of get off being somebody that's not who I really am,
Well, Lani, this has been absolutely amazing. Really enjoyed this interview, and I was just wondering,
thank you.
Where can our listeners kind of find out about your work and check out some of your stuff?
Well, I do have a webpage, LaniMinella.com. My business is Audio Gods with a Z on the end. And I'm on YouTube. You can look me up by my name. I have a playlist, and there's a bunch of trailers. And like I said, the Queen's Corgi, and I was the voice of the Pandora out the world of Avatar at Disney. All those clips are there that might be more amusing for somebody to find. And I really appreciate it. I've had a lot of fun. Thank you so much for having me.